Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good.
But like really good.
Yeah.
You know the reason why I'm asking really good?
Why?
Because recently the conversation's been that when you're checking up on friends, you're meant to emphasize the how they do in part.
Okay.
Just in case someone is truly going through something.
Right.
Because if I'm going through something and you initially ask me how I'm doing, naturally we tend to reply being like, oh yeah, I'm good, I'm all right. But there could be some like underlining tone behind it. So always ask, how are you doing?
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you say doing twice, then
you might get something out of it.
Yeah.
That's
a good idea.
Yeah, see?
It's kind of like when someone says in a shop, like, hey, are you okay? And it's like, I'm not going to tell you if I'm not. Like,
especially when it's a stranger asking you.
Yeah.
Know? But when it's a friend, then that second
definitely.
how you doing might potentially pull something out.
Yeah.
Yeah, see?
That's
So
very
always
true.
double ask. So how you doing?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. How you feeling about the podcast?
Bit nervous.
I can tell.
Yeah, can you tell?
Yeah. You're in good company. I wouldn't say I'm a pro. I mean, I'm only like
I'm
8
not
episodes
normally nervous when I'm sitting on this sofa with you. Like, today is a different day.
Today's like just completely just threw you off. It's all the lighting and the cameras and all sorts
Yeah,
of
but it's going to be fine. I feel like it's going to be fine.
How's your day been though? What have you been up to?
I've been thinking about today. I've been thinking about this.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about what I want to say and how I want to say it. And yeah, just other general
But
things.
what's the thought process been though? Because obviously something that you do on a day to day. So before we actually mention what it is that you do on a day to day though, like what's the thought process been in regards to what you wanted to get out, the message?
I've been thinking a lot about my own experiences and how I've come through things and how that kind of on reflection, what I would share with anyone who would be struggling. And also just thinking about how we can kind of change the way that we think about mental health and how we relate to one another and kind of emphasize the importance of how we relate to one another and what kind of effect that has, because it does have a massive effect.
Most definitely.
So, yeah.
So you're just trying to sort of construct how you're going to deliver that in an efficient way, which people will sort of take value from.
Yeah.
Amazing. So would you say your personal experiences is what got you into the field of the line of work that you do currently?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think I even didn't know that until like recently, to be honest. I think I always wanted to I wanted to be in a job where I was like taking care of people, but I didn't quite know why. And then I was really interested in mental health, and I think only in like the recent like couple of years have I actually fully realized. And now that I work with children now, I've really kind of can see that the reason I want to do that is because of the things that I've experienced, but maybe I didn't explicitly know that before. It's something I'm just coming to realize now.
So you feel like your life lessons have put you in a position of, or has given you certain knowledge that you're able to then like pass on to others.
Or not even knowledge, but also like that. Also, like the motivation to like learn more about it and become more skilled in it and become someone that can help other people.
Amazing.
And that's like a complete like ongoing process of like learning and
But how are you finding working in the field at the moment? And what is your exact title, just so that obviously
So I'm a mental health nurse.
That you do.
Yeah, I'm a nurse, but I specialise in mental health. And I work with children at the moment at Great Ormond Street Hospital.
Oh, amazing. What age range?
We accept patients from 8 to 14, but at the moment it's kind of like 11 to 12.
That's a tough age group to work with.
Yeah, like kind of early adolescence, like difficult at the best of times, let alone when there's like additional kind of problems with mental health and behavioural things. So so it's I've only been there since September, but really loved it and really
Is that
hated
you just
it.
saying? Is that a political
And
answer
like,
you're giving?
no, I'm saying like I've really loved it and then
Yeah.
I've really hated it, and like different, you know, it's been really, really hard.
Yeah.
But actually, it's been amazing actually, because also, like how I was trying to explain before about how maybe I didn't realise the reason that I wanted to go into that field, and now kind of discovering it, it really kind of working in that environment and doing the kind of work that we do there, it really makes you have a look at yourself. And you, to do the work, you really have to then like be in touch with yourself and like confront things that come up. So that's been amazing actually to do, but uncomfortable at times and really challenging.
It must be challenging, working with kids in because when I think of mental health, I used to think that it was a thing that adults go through based on life experiences and so forth. But then trauma can surpass any age group, so children must go through like extreme trauma at a really young age for them to develop mental health issues at the particular age that you're dealing with. So some of the issues that I'm sure you're facing must be extremely traumatic.
And definitely, and it's, you know, from the moment a child is born, they're like, you know, I mean, I guess as well, it's what definition do you have of mental health? And I guess that's another thing that I was thinking of maybe talking about. But yeah, like from the moment like a baby is born, everything that happens in their environment affects, you know, how we develop, you know, and particularly in childhood, like we're really vulnerable to, you know, the environment and the effects that can have, positive and negative. Maybe more vulnerable than we really kind of realise. So yeah.
Oh, amazing. But before we get further into that, like just a simple answer, how do we define mental health?
So mental health is, the phrase mental health means a state of well-being in your mentality. So I think sometimes people say mental health when they're talking about mental illness, and
and they're completely different.
Not completely different. It's just it's like physical health and physical illness, basically. So if you to ask me what's physical health, I'd say like it's a state of physical well-being. And what's physical illness? Well, there's many different types of physical illness, so it's the same kind of thing. So when we say mental health, it's about obviously it's like about that area. But mental health is like a state of well-being which we are all, you know, entitled to and hopefully can achieve, where we are kind of just able to live life in a way that's productive, and able to fulfill our potential, and able to deal with just normal stresses and strains of daily life, and actually just able to keep going and keep rolling. And where mental illness comes in is when, you know, something goes wrong in that and we're not then able to do those things as well.
But what causes it though? Like, because obviously there's various trigger points, but what are some of the main causes of mental health or mental illness?
Some of the main causes, wow. It's a difficult question because there's lots of different. It's a tricky
one, isn't it? It's quite
varied, there's a lot of different. There's a lot of different ways that you could struggle with your mental health. You know, we could be talking about, you know, like day-to-day anxiety, or we could be talking about something really chronic, like, you know, like schizophrenia that people live with for like years and years and years. Yeah, it can be. Yeah, there is evidence to suggest that. But I guess my way of working, I work in a very kind of like psychodynamic and behavioural way. So my attention is all, and my understanding is about the environment that you're in and how that shapes, rather than you kind of being born with something, how your environment feeds into how you learn to be and how you learn to respond to things, and how you, it's like I was saying, like at the minute you're born, you learn kind of everything you learn comes into two kind of major categories. Firstly, you learn about what the world is, and secondly, you learn about who you are as part of that world.
And then having to adapt into it.
And then having to adapt into it. So naturally, like, that process is, like, unbelievably complex. And we're working on it from the moment we're born until we die. So, you know, many things in that could affect us in a negative way, to the point that we struggle with mental health.
It's such a tricky subject when thinking about mental health, mental well-being, because there's no manual for it, to be honest. So the moment a child is born into this world, it's like the parents are trying their best to then adapt and to take care of that child the best way possible. But there is a major, I mean, especially nowadays, the conversation on mental health has been popping up all over the place, online, in literature, and so forth. And I feel like maybe we're reaching a point now where we're trying to have the discussion on how to better cope with it or manage it. And that is my thing. It's like, when a child is born, what are some of the measures that we can take to protect that child's mental health being, separate to their physical or the nutritional well-being? Because those things we kind of look into a bit more than the mental side. But the mental side is a crucial part, because it could determine the course of their entire lifestyle. So how do we go about doing this, and what is the general consensus on it in the industry that you're in?
I think it's a lot about awareness of how, I guess it's not an easy question to answer, is it? Like, it's about becoming aware of how things affect us and why they affect us. And I think that, I almost think, like, as a society, we're getting better at it, but I think we are quite blind to why we are the way we are and how things affect us. I think we're used to, like, this way of life where we just go through life and we're not actually that in tune with ourselves, and we're not that aware of.
You're like autopilot.
Yeah. And I'm saying this, like, from a place of personal experience, where my mental health has improved when I have actually established a kind of relationship with myself, where I've been able to identify why I'm feeling how I'm feeling. And that's something that's kind of really actually quite difficult to do. You get into the habit of doing it, but I think it's not kind of normal. It doesn't come naturally for us to do that. Like, I mean, obviously there's obvious things, like, I don't know, like, if you're arguing with a friend, you'll feel sad, like, and you know, we can understand that, and we know that that's the cause of our sadness. But then on a kind of a bit of a deeper level, you know, things like anxiety and depression, we don't always know, like, the nature of depression is that it's an illness. There's not always, like, a plausible reason, so to speak.
That's true, because even, I mean, before I truly got to grips with what the word depression was, sometimes I'll just feel low, or I'll just feel down. I'll be like, I'm depressed, bro, like, to one of my boys or whatever. But in actuality, I just felt down about a particular situation. It wasn't like an ongoing feeling. And then later on down the line in life, I realized that through personal experience as well of depression, I realized that it's more of a long-term effect. And it starts having, like, it starts playing a part in your day-to-day life, like how you feel when you wake up on a consistent basis, like you lack motivation, or you stop doing the basic things that you used to do as part of your routine in life, simply because you can't be bothered no more. You're kind of giving up. So we need to really be careful about how we go about throwing the word around, because sometimes we just feel down about a situation, but the actual medical issue of feeling depressed is something completely different. But do you mind sharing your own personal journey? Like, what is it that you went through, and how did you identify it or deal with it?
Well, it's kind of strange. Like, when I think about, you know, my history, my history with mental illness, it's kind of like a bit of a blurry thing as to where it started and where it kind of ended, and, like, has it ended, and, like, you know. But I mean, a clear way to kind of put it, I think I was prescribed antidepressants, I think I was 16 or maybe I was 17. But yeah, so sort of like late teenage years, I was first prescribed antidepressants. I stopped taking them about 6 months ago. So that's, like, you know,
was that of your own doing, or you got advice to?
It was I just decided to do it. For reasons that might become clear. But yeah, so that's about 10 years of being on treatment for clinical depression. But I think that's kind of like, it's a weird thing really, because, you know, was I depressed for 10 years? No. But, you know, I was in a position where myself, my family, my doctor felt that it was important for me to be taking antidepressants. So, you know, it's quite a complex thing. But, you know, I've had really great times in those 10 years and really awful times, and the worst times have been like so bad that I've, you know, felt really unable to, it's like you were saying, you know, there's a difference between feeling low about something and actually feeling like really unable to actually do anything. You know, I've been to hospital for my mental health. You know, I've felt so low that I just don't want to even wake up. I've never felt suicidal. I mean, I've thought about not being around, but I haven't ever. I've always, you know, thought of my family and my friends that, you know, love me, and that's always,
which is a really important factor as well when dealing with mental health.
Yeah, massive. Because I think without that, you don't have a lot. Like sometimes you don't have a lot of, you know, when you're feeling that low. So it's kind of like throughout my life, throughout the past 10 years, I've had like times where I've just resorted to being really withdrawn from life. And, you know, I've not gone to work or uni. I've not seen anybody. Actually, like I was thinking about like a couple of years ago, and I was living with like one of my best friends, and she said to me like, "Oh, you're always ill." And she was saying like physically, like you're always ill. And I've realised like looking back, I just would like be in bed for days and just not speak to anyone and say, oh, like I've got a headache or like, you know, whatever, like it'd be like a physical thing. But I like, you know,
but there wasn't no actual physical manifestation. It was just how your mind was
and you
just felt so low.
Like I would just wake up and I'd just be like, I can't get out of bed. I can't do it. And even just like weirdly like simple things like just going to the shop like would just be like, there's no way that I can do that. But it's a bit of a vicious cycle as well, because like the more you kind of let that happen, like it
becomes a habit as well.
I actually as well, I remember one of my friends said to me once that because I was kind of telling her that that's what I'd been doing, and I said to her like, I don't know if it's just that I'm lazy, and she kind of said, yeah, I think you're just lazy. And then I just kind of thought like looking back, like obviously, you know, she thought, you know, she wasn't being horrible. She just didn't understand. And I didn't understand either. Like I was asking her, do you think it's lazy? And she was like, yeah, I do. But, you know, looking back, like, no, I'm not a lazy person. You know, not a lot of people are lazy to like, you know, we don't just stay in bed as people.
I think I think one of the dangers as well is that sometimes the symptoms are there and they're quite obvious because there hasn't been enough dialogue about it, or there hasn't been enough information and communication in regards to what some of the symptoms are for mental illness. Like we struggle to pick it up, and we kind of mix it up with day-to-day struggles, like feeling lazy or feeling tired or feeling ill as such. So it's really important that these conversations are had, that if you're feeling something internally or externally and so forth in regards to like your emotions and so forth, that it's good to go and see someone or speak to someone about it. So, I think probably that's what your friend was going through. They weren't necessarily saying that you're lazy, but nonetheless, no one understood what it was that he was going through. Neither did
definitely.
You. So it's really important, and that's one of the vital things I think we need to consider when discussing mental health, is about how we can push enough information about it so people do understand what some of the triggers are.
Yeah, definitely.
But in your journey, what was the turning point for you? Like, what made you sort of get out of bed? Like, what motivated you to either seek help or to, I don't know, uplift yourself?
I have a lot of support from my family. Like, for example, I'm thinking like the times that I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Like you know, I've had like really long conversations with my mum for like hours and hours, like when I felt that way, and like, you know, just talking to someone. And I'm really lucky that, you know, my mum can talk to me in that state, and she can like get on my level and understand. She's also had her own, this is the thing as well, you know, mental illness kind of almost feels like a family member, really, because, you know, both my parents have had their own struggles, you know, which again, I think, you know, plays part of a role in why I've had struggles as well, definitely. But yeah, so I think just, having conversations about it with someone that I can trust, sometimes it takes for someone else to see that that's how you're feeling and that you can't do anything about it, and then say, okay, you have to do something, and like, you know, maybe set something up so that you have to get out of bed, or like, you know, encourages you to like take the little steps that you need to do. Because when you're in it, like when you're in that state yourself, you can't do that. Like, or, you know,
so you need the external push in it.
Like it's so hard to get out of that state on your own, because you don't have that motivation, and you can't see past it at the time. Like you just, that kind of like evades you. Like you can't do that. So yeah, definitely like in the moment, speaking to someone that I trust, like my mum, has been really helpful. But like, I guess a turning point in terms of like, so I said like I came off antidepressants, and I actually felt so much better, like better than I'd ever been when I came off antidepressants. But I think it was just me knowing that I could come off and I could make a success of it, and I didn't have to like wake up every day and be like, right, I need this, otherwise I won't be able to function. Like I've kind of realized, no, I actually can function without it. And I guess a massive thing has been, it's like I was saying at the start, where I was saying about how really we need to understand ourselves and understand why we feel how we feel. Something that was really helpful for me was that I see a psychodynamic psychotherapist. So that has helped me to really think about how I'm feeling on a deeper level and think about where does that come from. And you know, when I am so anxious and when I do want to withdraw, why is that? Because there is a reason for it. This is the thing, there is a reason. And I think we're so kind of sometimes used to just being like, oh, I've just got to pull it together and get on with things and then everything will be all right, that we don't validate the fact that actually, you know, our psyche almost is saying to us, listen to me, like there's something happening here. And I think maybe that was the turning point for me to actually think, okay, no, wait a minute, why do I feel this way? Let me listen to it, instead of just thinking, I don't want to feel this way, I don't want to feel this way, I don't want to feel this way, it's so horrible, I don't want to do it. Me just thinking, okay, why? If I find out why, and if I think about why,
and you're able to then concentrate your efforts into sorting out that why.
And I guess maybe like an attitude that we might have towards mental illness might be, you know, you just got to get together and you like pull yourself together and get on with it.
I've got major issues with that, because what tends to happen is sometimes when people discuss having mental illnesses and so forth, people are like, oh yeah, just get it together, like you can do it, and they'll give you like this little motivational talk, when most of the time there tend to be deeper issues aligned that you can't really deal with yourself, and you might potentially need professional medical help. Because I watch a lot of clips on YouTube, being part of the YouTube family now, and there's so many motivational talks that try to talk people out of mental illnesses. And they can be quite problematic in one way or the other, because others, it might just be a slight of depression and they just need that additional push to come out of it. Whilst others, there might be major issues like chemical imbalances and so forth. And many other issues that they might need to speak to a professional to help them get out of the situation regarding. So I find those motivational videos to get you out of deep, serious mental illnesses very dangerous when it comes to real life. Because I mean, I had a friend, someone who was going through serious issues, and so she initially, whenever she came, well, I was at fault as well during the majority of the time of her illness, because I was one of those people that are like, oh, you can do it, you're a strong person, I mean, I've seen you overcome other things. And it's only when she started seeing a professional that she realised that there was something deeper aligned that was in tune with her childhood. It's something that she kind of brushed to the side and didn't even know was affecting her now.
Yeah.
But until she took the step to go see a professional, she wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have known that was what's impacting her and causing all those issues that she's currently dealing with now, all those demons. So, yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm an advocate of seeing a psychotherapist or a medical professional when it comes to the matter of mental health.
Yeah. Because what you're referring to is like something that's actually like really invalidating for people. And I think people say it like, I don't think we need to like villainize it and be like, you know, this is so wrong. But we just need to understand that, you know, maybe we do say that sometimes, maybe we do. But I think as a society and like, you know, as a culture, sometimes we are very much like, you know, it's like stiff upper lip kind of thing, isn't it? Like, just keep going, like, you'll be fine kind of thing. Or like, or even sometimes like annoyance that someone's like not themselves and like, you know, what is wrong with you? Can you just get it together? You know, like how invalidating that is. And it's not helpful. It doesn't help. This is the thing, you know, saying pull it together rarely makes someone pull it together. So, yeah, I guess my thing is the same as you. Like, I think it's just so important that we try and just understand it because it's valid. Like, it's a real thing that's happening. If someone's experiencing, you know, something like that, and, you know, if it's affecting their life, it's affecting their life. It's a real thing. And just saying, like, pull it together isn't necessarily gonna actually make that happen.
So, I mean, in relations to mental health and mental well-being, what are some of the basics we can do to sort of like help us out when we feel down or out?
So, a big thing of mine, and I think it's like, it's becoming quite a trendy thing as well, which is nice.
You think that becomes trendy?
It's nice that it's becoming trendy because I think it's really important that it becomes more of a thing. But a massive thing that's really important for me to stay well is, it's like a journey that I'm having with myself. It's building my own relationship with myself. That's really important. And I think it's also about connecting with other people. But let me try and explain what I'm trying to say. I mean, it's always helpful to talk to other people. Like I said to myself tonight, you know, that's something that I found really helpful. And I think it's absolutely essential that we do talk to other people. I think it's essential that we're connected with one another. And I think it's really important to have conversations. But I also think that in terms of day-to-day looking after our own well-being, I don't think we're necessarily raised kind of to think about our own needs properly. And what I mean by that is like, I mean, like, for example, like I went to Sunday school, you know, like you were raised going to church as well. Like, how many times have we been told, love your neighbour as you love yourself, or you treat other people how you wish to be treated? And I guess like we all know that. We all know the rules. We all know how we should treat other people, but do we know how to treat ourselves? And also, how hard is it to treat other people really well if you yourself don't feel like you're being treated well? And you know, it's again like another cliche, like you can't love someone until you love yourself, but it's true. And you can't treat people well and you can't be around people in a positive way if you yourself are missing something. And I think that possibly we're raised or have been raised in a way that it could be branded selfish to look after your own needs but it's actually something that's really important, because we can't be selfless. Like if we ourselves are empty, like if we haven't put anything into ourselves, we have nothing to give. So it's kind of like a useless statement to just say, love thy neighbour, because the first thing is love thyself.
Love thyself,
and I kind of almost want to turn it on its head, and instead of saying treat others how you wish to be treated, to say treat yourself how you would be expected to treat another person. I think we're not. I don't think we're well practiced at that. I don't think it's been part of our upbringings, you know, that strongly. And hopefully it's becoming more of a thing. And, you know, we're getting more used to like self-care and like taking time for yourself and
really reflecting on yourself and your life and sort of like your own goals and purposes in life before you go. So because there's an interesting book I'm reading at the moment, and one of the common themes in the book is before stepping out into the world, always do your bed. So the first thing
I've seen that actually.
Yeah, the first thing you do when you wake up is to do your bed. And the premise behind that is that there's no way as an individual you can go out there and make an impact in the world if you haven't laid the foundation at home first. So if you haven't taken care of yourself. So it's not about physically laying the bed, but it's about making sure that home is good before you step out there. Because if you step out there and you have a messy home, how are you expecting to then make an impact out there in the world?
Yeah,
you see what I mean?
exactly.
How do you expect to then be able to point the finger and show others the way when you haven't cleaned your own household?
Yeah.
So it's really important, as you mentioned, that to really take care of yourself as an individual. Make sure that you're good in all the various aspects of the world, because there's so many things hitting us left, right, and centre in this world that we're living in at the moment. So a key thing, as you mentioned, is definitely taking care of yourself as an individual before you're then able to then care and love for others.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a massive thing to learn how to do as well.
Yeah, it's like how do you take care of yourself?
Yeah. Like my mum always says to me, like, you know, obviously my family live up north. Every time my mum says goodbye to me, she's like, take care of yourself, like look after yourself, after yourself. And she says to me, like, you know, give yourself what you would want me to have. And it's so weird how complicated that feels, and like it isn't second nature. Like it's not something that we're just doing. Like we're not just considering ourselves as like a loved one. You know, it seems like, think of the person you love most in the world. Do you treat yourself the way that you would treat them? Probably not. Like probably in your head you're like abusing yourself constantly and like being like, oh, that was rubbish, and like you need to do better, or you know, whatever, or like nobody likes me, or whatever negative thoughts that we might have. It's like, it's so not second nature to like have positive, like affirming thoughts for yourself and like a nurturing kind of attitude towards yourself.
I think besides the whole thought process and how you project energy on yourself, some of the basics that we can do as human beings, because the way I see it, looking after myself as an individual, one of the key things that I require first of all is my health. So ensuring that I'm eating the right things, I'm exercising. If I'm not exercising, I'm partaking in some sort of sport that has me physically moving around, because that's a part of caring and loving and nurturing myself as an individual. And then also, I mean, we all know that, I mean, money doesn't necessarily make you happy, but one of the things that's been proven to make us the most happiest is family. So ensuring that you have good relationship with your family and friends and the people that you spend the most time around with, because if you don't have great relationships with them, you're constantly carrying around the burden and the hate that you have for others.
Yeah.
So to me, being selfless and taking care of myself involves me taking care of myself physically, taking care of myself nutritionally, and also taking care of myself in terms of like the circle I have and the loved ones around me. Ensuring that there's constant good energy being projected amongst ourselves, because sometimes, like, I mean, especially nowadays, 21st century, we're inundated with so many things. Technology's completely clouded our minds. We're always in tune with the external, whether it be, I don't know, our phones and computers and so forth, that we forget the real connections that actually make us human and make us better people and happier in essence. So those are, I mean, that's something I'll give away as in like ways of taking care of yourself. And I think it's essential, because sometimes we kind of cut ourselves off from family and friends in the chase of whatever it is, whether it be our careers or businesses and so forth, and we forget all those connections that really do matter and really do keep us grounded and intact.
I wonder how, it's interesting that that, I mean, I agree, like I definitely do agree. I wonder how, I mean, I guess I always, you're always around your family, and I've always known that, you know, like from the first day I met you, like I've known that your family is like a massive part of your life, and you're always around them. And I mean, my family is a huge part of my life, but I live 350 miles away from them. So it's like, you know, I guess like what I'm trying to say is like connections are so important, but how do you said something and I was thinking, I wonder how, you said something about positive energy, about there always being positive energy, and I'm just interested to know, like, I know you're asking me questions, but like, how do you think you maintain that? How do you think, where do you think that comes from? Like constant positive energy. I mean, I don't think anyone can be constantly positive, but
yeah, I mean, I like to feel, well, I'm not, you can never be 100% positive.
Yeah.
But what I try and do and what really works for me is that whenever I meet someone or whenever I come across someone, it might be a stranger or it might be someone I've known for years, or it might be family, whatever, anyone, absolutely anyone. Whenever I come across another human being, my first thought is always to have a positive view of that person. So I go into every interaction assuming the best or thinking the best of this individual. So before I've even had any interaction and maybe they've changed my mind going the other way, I've always go into things believing that this person is going to be great. This person is going to impact my life. This person is going to be happy. So there's this thought process I have is that if I walk up to someone, let's say I don't know you and I walk up to you on a night out and I stretch my hands out to hug you, I'm going to have a different reaction to me coming up to you with my fist up.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the way I see energy.
Yeah.
That's the physical manifestation of how I see energy.
Yeah.
So I believe that if I project good and positive energy in any interaction, 9 out of 10 times I'm more likely to get that back. Mm-hmm. And it's strange because I people watch a lot. Like, I like to study people, like, intrinsically. Like, I'm forever, like, watching people. And I've realized those that carry negative energy internally and externally, they always get different results to those that carry positive energy. Like, I could walk into a workplace and end up like having a great relationship with the manager, but then when I'm sitting with one of my colleagues in the kitchen who comes into work always angry, always having negative energy, their experience with that manager is completely different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it made me realize
100%.
that our energy that we project is so important.
Yeah.
And we don't.
But how do we? I'm like devil's advocate. How do we? So you are someone in my life that I know I'm going to get that positive energy from, but I don't. There's not a lot. I don't know a lot of people like you.
Yeah.
Like you, everything you've said like resonates from my experience of you as a person. I know you're telling the truth, and that's one of the really great things about you. But most people are not like that. So
yeah, and it's
so
hard.
when people, so we as humans, that. Why do we come in with anger? Like, why do we, and how, like that, you're right, it does, it affects how we are, and it affects how people respond to us, and then it's like a whole cycle, isn't it? Like, that feeds.
Yeah.
But like, where do you get this like great strength to be, do you know what I'm getting at?
I get it. The thing is, I mean, it's a tricky situation because everyone has a different upbringing. Everyone has a different background in terms of where they come from, things that have affected them throughout life. But I think one of the biggest things that I take when in relations to how I project energy is accountability. Like, I'm a true believer in accountability. I feel I take responsibility for everything that happens to me. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So the moment you take responsibility for everything that happens to you, you're then able to then find solutions for that. And then you're able to then carry the burden yourself without projecting the burden onto others. And that is how I go about doing things. So anytime I look at something, like, let's say, I don't know, I slip and fall right now on the floor, I'll be like, well, I shouldn't have maybe put my foot in that wrong position. I won't blame anyone else. I won't be like, oh my gosh, it's the builder's fault. And now I'm going to be upset at the builder who put the flooring together.
Yeah.
So I take accountability for my life. And at the same time, I try and surround myself with people who are similar to me, and my family's a great example of that. But I didn't find them and put them around me. They just came around me. But in terms of like friends, the people I communicate with, the people I network with, if I can't project my energy to them, I try and move away and find other people who have that same level of energy that continuously helps me carry on going. So first of all, it's accountability, and that's probably my biggest thing that helps me maintain that same level of energy. That I don't blame anyone else. I'm not expecting anything from anyone else. Because as they say, anger comes from expecting and then being disappointed. Yeah. So for instance, if I'm expecting you to come to do this podcast and you don't turn up, and I was really expecting you to come, and I was like, oh my gosh, if she doesn't turn up for this podcast, I've had it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That energy would drift me somewhere else. But if she doesn't turn up, she doesn't turn up. If she turns up, great. Do you know what I mean? We just carry on going.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So being accountable for your own life, your own actions, being responsible for what you do is, in essence, will maintain that happiness. It keeps you going.
I think, I 100% agree. I agree so much, and it's actually so interesting because for two reasons. One reason is that in the kind of work that I do at the moment, obviously I'm working with young people. So that's what we're kind of part of what we're trying to teach them. And you see young people and they're really, really struggling. It's really hard. And you get those who struggle, and then realise that they can do something, and they realise that they want to change, and they realise that they can, and then they start to do it, and it's still really hard, but they get places. The ones that you really feel for and really can see that it's really, you don't see it getting better quickly, are those that are stuck in that trap that they can't see that actually what they do, they have a responsibility. Like you're saying, if you put your foot down and you slip, that, well, maybe I shouldn't have put my foot down on a wet.
You should have checked your step before before putting your foot down. Yeah.
Whereas there's an alternative mind that would say, oh my God, this world is out to get me. Nothing ever goes my way. And it's also really interesting because it's in my mind in terms of like bringing it back to mental health. But my mum is always like, she's always like that with me. Like, if I'm in a situation, she'll be there, she'll be empathetic about it, but it will always come back to, you could have done this differently, or like, this is why this has happened. And I've got so frustrated with her in the past, and like, you're just going to say it's my fault, and like, But she says to me, no, it's liberating. Like, it's liberating to say, I have control over my actions and over what I do. But also bringing it back to mental health, I have had like legitimate anger and like frustration that things aren't going my way, and it's been really hard to actually have that state of mind where you're like, okay, I can. And I think when you were asking me about a turning point as well, like around the time that I stopped taking antidepressants, I remember having like a conversation with my friend, and I was just like, oh my God, I've just realized like I could just make sure that I'm fine, and I could just make it that my choices, the way that I be, is better for me, like and creates but that was quite a revelation. Like it wasn't like it's
actually a revelation of self. That's the crazy part, because you are the vessel. So it's almost like you coming to your own realization that, oh, you've got some power here.
Yeah. Like, but also I think, for me to have had that realization about 18 months ago or whatever, for the first 26 years of my life, I haven't been functioning that way. So why not? And that, I believe, has been tied into when I've been mentally like really struggling, really unwell. I think it's something about like having your needs met, and again, like it comes back to the thing about caring for yourself, doesn't it? Because I think times when I've been so angry at the world and like frustrated and felt like, oh my God, this is so unfair, like why is this happening to me, when I've dug down and down and down and down, it comes down to like your needs are not being met. And and also it goes into childhood as well, and no parent is perfect, so a lot of my needs weren't met, but it's and then you have anger about that, but actually when you get to that place where you're like, oh, okay, so I can meet my own needs, that's what I need to do.
But let me ask you a question. So when you were angry at the world as such, what was it that you was angry at the world for? Is it your like upbringing? Was it your, I don't know, your circumstances? What was it like?
Upbringing, things that have happened. Like on the whole, I've had like a really nurturing upbringing, but there's also a lot of trauma, like a lot of negative things happened in my home for like the first 10, 15 years of my life. Like, a lot of you know, things that were really hard to deal with and that I shouldn't have had to deal with. And anger about that, anger about the kind of relationship that I had with my parents and why can't they be more like this, and then that feeds into later relationships, you know, like romantic relationships and relationships with friends, and feeling like, you know, being really like, why can things not work out? Why can things, you know?
Yeah. But so going back to when you first went on medication, you were what, how old was you?
I think I was 16.
16.
Yeah.
Was that something that you noticed, or was that mentioned to your family, or was it something that the family noticed and took you to?
I remember the exact moment, and my mum I was laying on my mum's bed, and my mum just said, I think you're depressed. And I remember my heart sank because it was, and also it's the language as well that's been in my house, is that it's been acceptable to talk about depression and things like that, which, you know, a lot of other families, maybe it's not that open, and it is, you know, it isn't.
Yeah, that's what I was going to touch on, hence why I'm asking that question.
Yeah, the language isn't there. The language in my household was, you know, it was open. You know, I knew about depression when I was a child. You know, I worried about my dad, that he might kill himself when I was 3 years old. Maybe not 3, but, you know, in my mind, I have those early memories. So my heart kind of sank. My mum said to me, like, I think you're depressed. And my heart sank, and I was like, oh, not me as well, kind of thing. That was kind of the thing. And so it was quite an easy then path to go to the doctors, get on the tablets that me and your dad are on anyway, kind of thing. And that's just, you know, the way that my family dealt with it. Maybe not all families would have dealt with it that way, and maybe not all.
That's the issue with mental health and cultures, because I mean, it was easy for you to talk to your family about it because you've experienced it as a family, and it's something that you've all dealt with together and come through. But in some cultures, and in particular in the African culture, depression or mental health isn't something that we talk about much within the home.
Yeah.
It's not a conversation that's had. Most children wouldn't even know if any of their parents have gone through depression, even though that we're more likely to go through depression than any other. And it's just one of those weird things, like culturally, like how do we cross those boundaries? Because I mean, my family per se, we talk about most things. So if someone goes through depression or someone's down and out, it's a conversation that will be had. But I know within a lot of cultures, and in particularly, especially with Black men, we don't really discuss mental health. It's almost as a sign of weakness if you come out as saying that you have an issue.
Yeah.
Do you feel what I mean? But how do we sort of cross those barriers, and how do we get rid of the stigma behind like these cultural bounds?
I think generally, like, my perception of things is that wherever there's stigma, there's fear. And I think stigma is a defense mechanism against fear, against something that's scary. I wonder if it's something about that, and I wonder if it's about thinking to get past it. Think, okay, so what are we afraid of here? Like, what is the thing that we're fearful of?
Well, in the Black community, I'll say one of the major fears is the system. So how they'll be treated by the system, because you hear all these various stories that when you're Black and you get caught up in the system, you're not treated the same. Do you know what I mean? And cultural things are then seen as being perceived as mental illnesses. Because I've had family members that have worked within the field, and they say when a African person comes in per se, and something simple like, I don't know, them cooking a traditional meal and eating with their hands, it will be marked down as strange behaviour. But really and truly, it's just a cultural norm. Do you know what I mean? If they go to most African households, they eat in particular foods with their hands, and it's just how it goes. So all those stories that we hear about the system and people being manhandled, especially particularly black men being manhandled, mistreated, it all creates that taboo, as you say, because where does the stigma? There's fear, and that's where a lot of that fear comes from the stories that we hear, that it's an unknown place you're being taken into. So how do I then trust these people with my issues? I'd rather deal with it at home. And another issue as well, which I think causes a lot of problems, especially within the African side of things, is it's our spirituality. So a large chunk of us we're part of some faith or the other.
Yeah.
And what we tend to do is, when there is an issue, we always tend to leave it in the hands of God instead of dealing with the medical issue at hand. So those are some of the things that we need to look at culturally as well. So those are two things that I can identify on top of my head that causes some of these problems. One is distrust of the system, which has been proven to be against us in some quarters, and then the second is the sort of the influence of spirituality and religion and so forth.
It's interesting because in my training, I remember like this one patient, a Bangladeshi guy, and he was eating with his hands, and a nurse came up to him and was like, "That's disgusting."
Serious.
And I was like, "Did you want a fork, or do you want to just eat it like that?" And he was like, "I always eat my dinner this way." And I was like, point made. And I was like horrified that had happened. So, unfortunately, those things do happen, and it's not okay in any way. But I think, why does that happen? I mean, that person didn't understand. That nurse didn't understand. They didn't know what was they didn't know. They've got in their mind, they've got a job to do. All these patients are really unwell, largely psychotic. So, you're expecting strange behaviours. That was seen as a strange behaviour. I mean, I wouldn't say that's disgusting to a patient. I don't think that's helpful. But, in that scenario, that's what has happened. But I think that... we just, in a way, when we're so afraid to talk about things, it can only get worse. Yeah. And I think we're afraid to have conversations. But why are we afraid to have conversations? Because it's only a conversation, and the only thing that we can gain from a conversation is more understanding.
Yeah, most definitely.
But I think we're afraid to have difficult conversations. Part of my training as a mental health nurse was, how do you have difficult conversations? Like, how do you go beyond the point where it's uncomfortable and keep going?
How do you
because that's where you need to go. But I remember my tutor said something that will always stay in my mind. If you have an ache or a pain, say a doctor's feeling your tummy, right, and you have a pain, when the doctor gets to the point where he's pushing your tummy or she's pushing your tummy, and you go, "Oh, that's where it hurts," they don't go, "Oh, sorry, okay, all right, I'll leave it now." They push harder because they want to know why it hurts. And they say, "I'm really sorry this hurts, but I need to just push. And does it still hurt here? And does it still hurt here?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm in absolute agony. Get off me." And they're like, and that's what we do as mental health professionals. We go, "Okay, that seems to be causing a lot of pain. So I'm going to push, and I'm going to say, I know it really hurts, but I need to know why. You need to know why. We need to know what's going on." And I think we're really afraid of doing that. And I think, maybe that's why stigma's come up, because the less we talk about it, the harder it is to talk about, and the scarier it seems. And I feel like I've actually just not spoken about your point, because your point was about spirituality and about...
No, it was touching on both, because I was just highlighting...
I've come up with my own little thing to say.
I completely appreciate that, but I was just touching on two things that I've noticed that causes the issue or causes there to be a taboo in regards to like us approaching for help.
I guess the same thing still applies, because like you still... It still needs to be talked about, doesn't it? And say you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm going through this, but I feel like my parents would think, I don't want to talk about that because, we should go to God for that, or we don't want to get down the line where you have to go to hospital and then, you could be treated away. It still needs to be talked about, It still needs to be talked about. And maybe my point wasn't as irrelevant as I thought it was, because actually...
No, definitely, yeah. The dialogue is important.
Yeah. And we are afraid of having conversations. It's like when you sat down and you were like, how are you? No, how are you? How are you? Or whatever it was that you said.
How are you for like 10 times prior to starting the podcast.
Yeah, you know, you're someone that can do that, but you know, we're afraid to do that, I think. We don't feel comfortable doing that. I think like we're worried about what effect we could have, or we might say the wrong thing, or like but actually, you know,
that is one of my biggest, well, it's not one of my biggest fears, but currently that's one of the things that's really bugging me, and that's our fear to speak out. Because at the moment, there's so many trigger points for absolutely everything. PC culture is just driving everyone nuts. Like, it's driving me up the wall.
Yeah.
But this is how I see conversation. Conversation needs to be allowed as long as there's no incitement of violence and out and outright racism. Because I feel like if you got a different view to me, we need to hear your side of the argument. If I've got a different view to you, we need to hear my side of the argument. Because one, we're two completely different people. We come from completely different backgrounds. We're raised completely different. But we need to coexist in a world where we can treat each other fairly and have a fair understanding of each other's cultures.
Yeah.
So at least we don't go around killing and hurting each other.
Yeah.
But in order for us to do this, we need to have the conversations. Like, you need to be able to ask me why my hair is the way it is. Why my skin is the way it is. Why is your hair the way it is? Why is your eyes the way it is? Obviously, I'm just being lighthearted about it, but there's deeper conversations that need to be had in order for us to be able to coexist. I feel like it's happening right now. There's a bit of an imbalance, because at the moment there's a bit of a revolution online where there's a lot of political talk. There's a lot of discussion on sex, race, genders, and all sorts. Everything's being thrown up in the air at the moment. And then you've got the police, the PC police, that are completely trying to shut that down.
Yeah, and it's a termination of communication, isn't it? Like,
Most
it's
definitely.
saying like, oh, you can't use that word.
Yeah, but then at the same time, it's like those conversations need to be had, because if you have a particular viewpoint that then. Also, if you come from a particular culture or a particular environment that allows you to use particular words that might not necessarily be right, I need to know that in order for me to have a conversation and rectify you on it.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Especially if it affects me as an individual. You see what I mean? We need to understand each other. But if there's too many laws and too many boundaries, everything gets kind of swept under the carpet. But then the issue at hand hasn't been dealt with. You might still carry those prejudices. You might still carry whatever is views about me, and I might still carry whatever views I have about you. But because I'm not allowed to speak about it and we can't communicate as two human beings to then have our views judged by either each other or by others, we're unable to have that conversation. So I think mental health, and in particularly, I would say mental health in relations to like my community, in the Black community in particular, it's a conversation that we need to bang on about, because we're the ones suffering from it the most. I know the stats say we're like 17% more likely to suffer from it and so forth, but I reckon that's a bit... I reckon the stats might be slightly different. It's just that we don't report it as much as most other places. And by the time...
Yeah, no, it is known to me in my profession that, you know, Black males especially are more vulnerable to mental health. Yeah.
And mental what's the reason from your line of work? What would be the reason why we tend to suffer more?
I can only...
Isn't it like 17% more likely?
I don't know an exact statistic that I would be confident to put my name to, my face to, but well,
I'll put my neck on the line. I'll say 17%.
Yeah, I don't know. We should find out actually, because the documentation is out there. Like, I've read this stuff. You know, I've studied it. But I guess, you know, there is a massive socioeconomic factor to mental illness, in the sense of, you know, if you're living in a place where you have all these resources and, you know, you have good social interactions, and, you know, you're much better prepared to kind of overcome small things that, if not overcome, may become bigger. And, you know, but I don't think that's the reason. I just think, you know, that is a part of it.
Yeah. There's so many factors. It's hard to really pinpoint one particular reason. There's never really going to be just one reason as to why Black men in particular. But I mean, some of the documentation and research would say trauma, long-term trauma, continuous prejudice against the Black man. And there's so many things and so many burdens that the Black man carries that can potentially play a part in it. So, but yeah, socioeconomical is a big one.
Yeah.
because where there's opportunity, people flourish, and where opportunity is created, people flourish as well, and where people flourish, they live a better life, they live a more fruitful life, a more meaningful life with more purpose, which then leads to better mental health state, because as we know, like, I mean, physical and having a purpose and something that you can drive for, something that gets you up in the morning, it all plays a part to having a healthy mental state. So where they lack that opportunity, that must play such a major part, and all the other various social stigmas that's attached to being black, and particularly a black man.
Yeah, because stigma as well. Because also, like, you know, had I not, I'm telling you about that conversation I had that led to me going to get antidepressants. Had I not been able to have that conversation, had that openness not been allowed to happen, where would I be? I don't know. You know, if that had just been buried somewhere, you know, if it had been, you know, my mum raised me Christian as well. If she'd have said, we just take it to God and that's it, you know, maybe my faith would have been strong enough to carry me through that, but maybe it wouldn't have done. And then if that had then become a stigma, where would I be? Like, you know, would I be functional? I don't know. So it's a massive...
I think that in itself can drive someone into bad mental state, not having an outlet. I think not having an outlet is one of probably the worst things. It's like being trapped inside your own prison, like you're struggling mentally, but you just don't have an outlet, or your environment is not allowing you to be an outlet onto yourself. So like
and that's
trapped.
Really damaging.
Most definitely.
That's really a damaging thing. I mean, I'm someone that knows how it feels to not want to tell anyone or feel like I can't tell anyone. But like in a different way. I mean, I've just spoken about the fact that I was able to be open with my family, which is, you know, a massive thing. But it just, you know, like socially, like, for example, talking about, you know, last year or whenever it was that I was in bed for ages, and my friend said to me, like, you're always ill. And I couldn't say to her, like, I've known this girl for 10 years. I couldn't say to her, I don't want to get out of bed because I don't know how. Like, my mental state is such that I can't move. Going to the shower feels like it's so impossible. I couldn't say that to her. I had to say, don't know. Like, you know, it must be the weather. I don't know. But, you know, like...
But when it comes to matters of the mind, do you find it easier discussing it with people that you know or strangers? Because the reason why I'm asking is I recently read an article which talked about, I don't know, I forgot what it was called, but it was like the train journey theory or something. I forgot. It was named something along the train.
It wasn't the tidal model, was it?
I forgot what it was.
Okay.
But what this article was saying is that that sometimes you can have a conversation with a stranger on a train for an hour that gives you an outlet and more relief than speaking to someone you've known your whole life, simply because you're not able to be completely free when it comes to deep personal matters with people that you know and people that might potentially judge you. I
think I've also just changed my position. Is the mic going to be okay?
No, it's cool.
My legs are getting stiff. I think the difference is that when you have and maybe I have found it easier to speak to professionals, people that don't know me on a personal level. I'm only just becoming someone that opens up to my close friends and family how I truly feel about things. I mean, only like a few months ago, like my mum said to me, like, you don't tell me things. And I like even remember like you texted me like a few months ago and you were like, Rach, what's up? Like, I haven't heard from you for ages. And I don't know what I replied, but I was like, I can't talk to you. Like, I can't. And you were just like, oh, come back when you're ready, which was the best thing for you to do in that point. But I just am not someone that has found it easy to say to someone that cares about me, I'm really not okay. And I think it's a lot of, I think it's almost guilt, like...
You don't want a person to carry your burden. Basically.
Yeah, I don't want to put that on you. Like, you've asked me if I'm okay. Well, I'm not. And if I tell you the truth that I'm, like, really, really not okay, that's not fair on you. Like, you shouldn't have to deal with that. Like, you know, even like my best friend, my closest friend, you know, she took me to hospital once. So I was really struggling with anxiety. Like, it was quite serious physical effects of anxiety. And I just, even then, I just couldn't. And she just sat there the whole night with me by my side, and I couldn't tell her how I couldn't, you know. And I think, but then if I'm put in front of, you know, there was a nurse that like the next night he rang me and I told him everything, you know, like I just,
story,
and I didn't, and I didn't
Mm.
tell Sophie any of that stuff. She didn't know any of that stuff, but she was there with me the whole time, but I couldn't tell her, and I couldn't tell my mum, and I couldn't, you know, and yeah, I think it's about that, isn't it? It's about how can I like put this burden on you, like, which is interesting, because then if one of my friends came to me and said, I'm struggling, I wouldn't feel burdened.
I think that's one of the things that we need to sort of like eradicate as well, is that fear of putting burden on people. I understand, like, you don't necessarily have to put all your issues on them and expect them to cure you, but it's just good to discuss things. And it's good to not be afraid to hold back from your friends.
Yeah.
So like, and that's why I always say it's really important in relations to who you surround yourself with. That's one of the pointers I was giving in relation to how I keep my energy up. So within my friend group, for instance, there is nothing I can't say to them. You know what I mean? There's stuff I say to them on a day-to-day basis that I can't approach my family with. And that keeps me sane, because regardless of how I feel, regardless of what spectrum of the emotional balance I'm on, I can always approach my friends with it. I can just send a message to the group and be like, guys, I'm down and out. And the rest of them do it as well. We all do it. Like, guys, this is what's happening. It's so forth and so forth. And each one of them is always willing to support where they can.
And that's gold dust.
Yeah. And support doesn't necessarily mean coming there and giving you like a Martin Luther King speech. They can just come and be like, yo, let's go and grab a burger or something. Let's go grab something to eat. Or what are you doing? Let's just chill. Like, what's up? And that. And that alone is a major outlet. So as friendship groups, we should realize the importance of being available and being the type of individual where if someone is in dire need, they can just approach you with it, like, without feeling like they're burdening you.
Yeah.
Because
I think the sense of burden comes with feeling that you have to do something to solve it.
Yeah, I think that's what people need to realise. They don't have to necessarily come and solve it, because
No.
none of them are medically trained. And that's why whenever anyone is down, I don't try and give them no moral high ground speech and be like, yeah, you're out of it, you're going to wake up tomorrow, you're going to be great. Like,
but my training, my professional work is largely based on just using my like human intuition. You know, there's professional skills intertwined with that, but they're about talking. They're about relating. You know, my profession is based on relating to a human being. That's what it is. You know, there are skills that come with that, and there's certain evidence-based ways to, you know, encourage people to think or whatever. But it is essentially, it's talking to a human being. That's my skill set. You know, and so I think, let's not mystify it. Let's not put it up here as something like, you know, this big thing that the treatment for anxiety and depression is talking therapy. That's what the NHS provide. So, you know, it's talking to a professional, and they will, you know, they might employ certain things like CBT and things like that, which are structured kind of evidence-based therapies. But essentially, it's talking. That's the treatment. The treatment is talking to a human being about how you feel. That is how you get better. You know?
It's actually quite simple when you put it in that context. Because that's what it is communication. But then sometimes we feel so isolated within ourselves that we feel we don't have that circle to communicate with. When we might end up having like thousands of friends on Facebook and social media and so forth, but that connection is not there. Because I read an interesting article as well. It was a stats-based article that was showing that like our grandparents' generation, so like 60 years ago, people that suffered from mental health issues and depression and so forth were way older than we are now. I think they used to be in their like late 50s. I'm not sure exactly the age group, but now we're suffering at a younger age. It's like in our 20s. Like,
well, maybe we're just noticing it. Maybe we're just noticing it.
Yeah.
Because maybe we don't, you know, like I think about the young people that I work with. I mean, I was going to say in the olden days. Who even says that? When even was
like
the olden days? What am I even saying?
Back in your day,
but like, for example, like when my dad was growing up, you know, these young people that I'm now working with, and we acknowledge that they have complex problems. Back then, they would have just been naughty or like a pain in the arse or like, you know, from a bad family, and that would have been it. And that's your lot, like, you know. And so
the diagnoses have been improved, basically.
Yeah, maybe we're just better at actually noticing and at looking and saying, okay, no, like you're actually really struggling with some really complex things that any human being put on this earth and given that lot to deal with would be struggling with.
Yeah, but do you think some of the cures are beneficial? Because especially the medical ones, because what I tend to find when I'm reading about like mental health is that you have side effects having mental health issues, and then you're given medication that gives you a different set of side effects.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like an endless circle. And when you come off that medication, you're on a completely different wave after that. So it's like, what is it? What is the issue? And are these medications worth taking in the first place? Or should we find better solutions to it?
Yeah. From a personal and from a professional viewpoint, I feel the same way. I mean, obviously my area of work, I don't work with like organic psychosis, and that's kind of a bit of a different thing. Psychotic illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar, there's definitely points at which it's advantageous to have medication, and in depression as well. Like, you know, it's not as a blanket rule not the solution. It's definitely not that simple. There are roles for medication in the treatment of mental illnesses, but I think those roles are very much secondary, or very much what they do is pave the way for solving the problems in a different way, and acknowledging that actually the way you do get better and move on is understanding what's happening. Now that's more complex in an organic kind of psychotic illness, and it's important to say that, but definitely in your kind of, you know, depression and anxiety and I don't know, like eating disorders, PTSD, you know, anxiety and mood-based problems, our psyche, our mind is saying, it's like an alert, it's like a notification, like something's not okay, like, and you can address that, and that can get changed. And I don't believe that I was on antidepressants for 10 years. Okay, maybe they helped me in my lowest points. They helped me to get back to my motivation. They raised the amount of serotonin that was available in my brain, which played a role in helping my motivation to increase. But they didn't help me to address the reasons for why I would feel so sad. They didn't help me to understand why I had panic attacks, you know.
And that's my issue with the medication side of things, because it's not addressing the issue. We're not solving the deep-rooted issue, the problem. We're just taking medication or subdue whatever it is that you're feeling at that particular time. And
in
a scary proposition.
In young people that I work with, we don't. It's very not a last resort, but it's definitely not on our minds to give them psychotropic medication when they come through the door. It's on our minds to pick it apart. You know, why are you feeling this? What has happened in your life? Like, what's your parents' perception of it? Like, what, you know, to build up a story, and then we see, you know, behaviorally and environmentally. And so that works for children. So why would that, you know, what age do you get to where that's no longer the case? Do you know what I'm getting at? Like, is it on your 18th birthday? Suddenly all your problems are now, you know, biological? Like,
it's like we prevent ODing the kids on the medication, but when you reach an adult stage, like, here you go. Like, this
it's easier, isn't it, to say, here you go.
Yeah.
And, GPs are prescribing these medications. They're not psychiatrists, they're GPs. So they wouldn't be giving you chemo if you went there, and said, I think I've got cancer. They wouldn't be like, okay, just in case you have, I'm going to give you this chemo over the counter. Just hand in this slip at Boots and get your chemo and just... so of course it's not that straightforward to compare it, but in the sense of, that's kind of become quite an easy solution. But is it a solution properly?
It's not really a solution.
It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. I'm happy than I've ever. I feel more confident in my ability to keep myself well now that I'm not taking antidepressants.
So what do you do, like, just to conclude, like, what is the general well-being practices that you're doing at the moment to keep yourself good and going?
It's really an ongoing thing. Like, it's not something that you master and you get to the end and you're like, I did it. Here's my certificate. I'm going to be well forever. Like, it's
distinction in that.
It's like a real daily thing. But I think key things that I practice now and come more as second nature to me where they didn't before are recognizing how I feel, which sounds like a really simple thing to say, but actually it's maybe not that simple. Recognize it, in the sense of, if you have a feeling like a negative emotion, like, validate that, like, think about it, stop and think, like, what am I feeling here? Why do I feel this? Don't just be like, oh, it'll go away. It's fine. I just need to snap out of it. Be kind to yourself and just say, all right, what's going on? Have a think about it. Have a talk about it. Talk with someone. We've been saying about talking, like, that is so essential. Maybe you're not at that point where you can write it down instead, until you get to that point. That's something I have, daily. I'm thinking, like, why do I feel this way? Acknowledging and validating my own emotions and saying, this is how I feel and it's probably because of this, and that's in itself is really helpful. But then just the general basics, like making my bed is such a big thing. Like, I have to make my bed. If I walk into my room and it's messy, I know that I'm letting something slip. Like, that's a big trigger for me.
You're not ready to take over the world now, are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Conquer your room before you conquer the world.
So it's like, getting out of bed, being like, I deserve, when I've had this hard day at work, I deserve to come back to a room that is comfortable and is nice. And I'm going to make sure that I do that for myself. And then I'm going to eat properly because I also need that. And then I'm going to, like, leave on time because I deserve to turn up to work and have, like, the headspace and the clarity. So it's like, it would be different for each individual person. Like, everyone has different things, but it's about acknowledging how you feel, finding out why you feel that way, and then just routinely doing the fundamental things that are good for you.
Amazing, yeah. One thing that I'd like to touch on just before we conclude is that, I mean, we've already discussed the self first, ensuring that your home is in order, or your mind state, your health and everything about yourself is in order. So caring for yourself before you care for others. But there's also another important element to it as well, and that's the ripple effect of us as human beings, that every single action we take has a consequence and has an effect on someone. Like, we tend to think that we're this distant island, not knowing that every time you step out your house, you're about to have a major impact on someone's life. So the person you come across on the street, the person you come across on the bus, on the train, at work, however your interaction with that person goes, it's going to play a part in how the rest of their day and the rest of potentially their life ends up. So just being kind to ourselves and ensuring that we're kind and responsible and respective to others has a major effect in us, in our overall well-being. So that's another important factor. So start off with the self first, and then also acknowledge that you're a part of a major puzzle and a major network, and how you interact with others has an effect on their life and your life and others people's life. So the ripple effect is very real.
Although what I would say is, when I'm feeling at my most well, that's not it doesn't even cross my mind. It just flows, like it just comes naturally. And I think the same could be said for every single person. When you are feeling well in yourself, that's you know, that flows, that happens. You don't have to try, you know, like I don't have to try and not be annoyed because the baby's screaming on the bus. I just think it's a baby. Oh, cute. Even like, can I go see it? Even like, do you know what I mean? Like, whereas when I
that walk up to people,
no, but like, as opposed to, you know, on a bad day when I might be like, I could get up and like, why do they even let prams on the bus? This is ridiculous.
Why are kids even allowed into it?
Yeah, but when you feel like that, you know it's because maybe, you know, what am I missing that I feel that way?
Yeah.
Bring it, like, that's my philosophy. Like, bring it back to yourself because it's easy when you're good. It's easy.
Yeah.
It flows. You don't have to think about it.
Yeah, and then also it's very important to seek help. So
yes,
regardless of who you are, what you are, everyone can go through. Everyone. I mean, mental health affects how many people now? Like,
I mean, everyone. I mean, you don't go through your life without ever getting a physical illness or without ever feeling physically under the weather.
And the mind takes a beating as well. I mean, because the mind is constantly working. There's times where our body's at rest, but the mind is functioning. So, like, let's just get rid of this taboo that there is an issue with someone who has mental problems and they should be kept isolated from everyone
even
else.
that it's, you know, I think it's a spectrum. It's not like, it's a spectrum of well-being. It's like the same as physical. Okay, not everyone, some people will never have to go to A&E in their lives. Some people will never have to go and seek help for their mental health. However, we all know what it feels like to wake up and think, oh, my back's a bit sore, like, you know, I've got a bit of a stuffy nose. It's a whole spectrum. So I think, you know, remembering that we're all somewhere on that spectrum. And there might be people sitting there thinking, God, I don't know how it feels to feel anxious. Like, one of my friends asked me the other day, what is anxiety and why don't I have it? And I was like, interesting question. You know, but then, okay, so your role, you can still make sure that you're tending to your needs well, and you can still make sure that you're looking after yourself, and you can still make sure that you're contributing to the world by being someone that cares about other humans.
Amazing, Rach. We're definitely going to continue this conversation, though, Rach.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. You got into it eventually,
Thanks
didn't
for
you?
having me. I know, like, at first I was a bit like, oh.
I know, I was like, how am I just going to warm her into it?
I could see it in your face. You were like, oh, God.
I was like, okay, let me just bring out all the tricks and trades of the book now, just to try and get into it. But
you did good.
I appreciate it. I mean, your wealth of knowledge and what you had to share is amazing, and I know you got way more to.
Yeah, I could talk for hours on it, really. But we both always do this.
Yeah, definitely. This is like
we just talk the whole time.